Most students prepare for their defense with practice runs. They present to their advisor, they gather lab mates for mock sessions, they rehearse their slides. It feels productive, it feels like preparation, and while it's helpful for refining your explanations and catching obvious gaps in your content, there's a critical problem with this approach. It doesn't train your nervous system for the real thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. Think about what happens when you rehearse with your advisor. You're sitting with someone who knows you deeply, someone who's invested in your success, someone who's been working with you for years, who helped shape this research, who wants you to pass. Even when they ask you tough questions, and good advisors do ask tough questions, your brain recognizes something fundamental. You're safe. This person isn't a threat. They're not trying to expose your weaknesses. They're trying to help you prepare. So here's what happens biologically. Your amygdala, that threat detector we talked about in Module 2, stays quiet. It doesn't fire up. Your stress response doesn't activate. Blood remains in your prefrontal cortex, keeping your thinking sharp and your memory accessible. You can articulate clearly because your nervous system isn't treating this as a survival situation. Now contrast that with your actual defense. In your real defense, you're facing evaluators who don't know you well. They haven't been working with you for years. They're not invested in making you feel comfortable. They're judging whether you're competent enough to join their professional ranks. They're going to challenge assumptions you haven't questioned. They'll point out limitations you didn't fully consider. They might ask you about decisions you made 3 years ago that you barely remember making. And your brain knows the stakes here. These people have power over you. They can reject you. They can say you're not ready. Years of work are on the line. This triggers your threat response. Your amygdala fires up, blood starts leaving your prefrontal cortex right when you need your thinking capacity most. Practicing with your advisor doesn't prepare you for this because it never activates that threat response in the first place. What about practicing with friends, with peers, other graduate students who can ask you tough questions? Same fundamental problem. They know you, they like you. Even when they're trying to be tough on you, they're pulling their punches. They don't want to make you feel bad. They're not trying to genuinely expose your weaknesses or catch you off guard. And you know this. Your brain knows these aren't real evaluators. They're friends who are helping you prepare, so your nervous system stays calm. Plus, their questions are predictable. They're asking what they think a committee might ask. But they're graduate students like you. They don't have the depth of experience or the critical eye that faculty on your committee have developed over decades. So even when they're trying to challenge you, the questions don't have the same edge, the same unpredictability, the same feeling of genuine scrutiny. Your nervous system stays calm because there's no real evaluation happening. And without authentic pressure, you're rehearsing content, which is useful, but you're not conditioning your stress response, which is what you actually need. Let me give you an analogy that explains why this matters so much. Pilots train in flight simulators for emergencies, engine failures, bird strikes, hydraulic system malfunctions, situations where everything goes wrong and they have to respond fast under enormous pressure. These simulators don't just explain what to do in an emergency. They don't just show pilots information about procedures. They create the actual experience of the emergency. The controls behave like they would in a real emergency. The warning lights flash, the alarms sound, the simulator pitches and rolls. And the pilot's heart races. Adrenaline surges through their system. Their threat response activates, and they have to fly the plane anyway, make decisions anyway, execute the procedures anyway, while their stress response is firing, while their hands might be shaking, while their heart is pounding. They do this over and over, hundreds of times, until their nervous system learns something fundamental. This is stressful, but I can handle it. I've done this before. I know what to do even when my body is screaming danger. That's how you train for high-stakes performance, not by reading about emergencies in a calm classroom, not by having relaxed conversations about what you do if an engine failed, by actually experiencing the stress, by having your threat response activate, and by learning that your system can stay functional anyway. So here's what's missing from your regular practice sessions. 3 critical elements. First, unpredictability. In real pressure training, you don't know what questions are coming. You can't prepare the exact answer ahead of time. You have to think on your feet in real time. You have to process the question, search your knowledge, construct a coherent response, all while under pressure. Second, genuine evaluation. The person questioning you has power to judge you inadequate. Your brain registers real stakes, real consequences. This isn't practice. This is an actual assessment of your competence. Third, threat activation. Your amygdala fires up. Your stress response engages. Your heart rate increases. You feel that physical sensation of being under scrutiny, and you have to perform anyway. You have to think clearly, speak articulately, respond intelligently while your body is in threat mode. Your advisor can't create these conditions. They're not trying to catch you off guard. They're trying to help you anticipate questions. They're not genuinely evaluating whether you're competent. They already know you are. And because your brain knows they're on your side, your threat response doesn't activate. So you end up training for calm conditions when what you actually need is to train for the storm. Here's what makes this particularly dangerous. It creates false confidence. You do a mock defense with your advisor. You answer their questions well. You explain your methodology clearly. You handle their challenges smoothly, and you feel prepared. You think, okay, I've got this. I know what to expect. I can handle the questions. But you haven't actually experienced what the real thing feels like. You haven't felt your heart pounding when someone asks you a question you weren't expecting. You haven't had to think clearly while your amygdala is screaming danger. You haven't trained your nervous system to stay regulated under genuine pressure. So you walk into your defense thinking you're ready, and then your amygdala fires up for the first time. Blood leaves your prefrontal cortex for the first time. You're trying to perform a skill, articulate complex explanation under questioning that you only ever practice under calm, supportive conditions. And now conditions aren't calm anymore. It's like practicing driving on empty roads and then taking your test in rush hour traffic. The skill you need is the same, steering, braking, merging, but the conditions are completely different, and you haven't trained for those conditions. Some students try to fix this problem. They ask their advisors or friends, "Don't go easy on me. Ask me the hardest questions you can think of. Really challenge me. Be tough." This helps a little. Harder questions are definitely better practice than softball questions. You're at least thinking through more complex responses, but it still doesn't create real pressure because the fundamental dynamic hasn't changed. Your brain still knows this person is on your side, still knows they want you to succeed, still knows they're not actually evaluating whether you belong in the profession. So your threat response doesn't fully activate. You might feel a little nervous, you might work a little harder to formulate your answers, but you're still practicing under fundamentally calmer conditions than you'll face in the real defense. You're still not training your nervous system for actual pressure. Here's a principle from high-stakes performance training that explains what's happening. You fall to the level of your training, not your knowledge. Under pressure, you don't suddenly perform better than you've ever performed before. You don't magically rise to the occasion and exceed your previous capabilities. You perform at the level you've trained at the level your nervous system has been conditioned for. If you've only trained under supportive, predictable conditions, if the only practice you've done is with people who know you and want you to succeed, that's what your nervous system is conditioned for. That's the level of pressure it knows how to handle. Then pressure hits. Your committee challenges an assumption you made. They ask a tough question you weren't expecting. They point out a limitation you didn't fully address, and your threat response activates for the first time. Your nervous system doesn't know what to do. It hasn't been here before. It hasn't learned that this level of pressure is manageable, so it goes into full threat mode. Blood leaves your thinking brain, your heart races, your hands might shake, because as far as your nervous system knows, this could be dangerous. It's never learned otherwise. So let me be clear about what practice with your advisor and friends is actually good for. It's valuable, don't skip it, but understand what it gives you and what it doesn't. It's good for content rehearsal, checking if your explanations are clear, testing if your slides work visually and your data is presented well, identifying obvious gaps in your logic, refining your narrative flow, making sure your story makes sense, getting feedback on technical accuracy. Did you explain that method correctly? These are all important. You should absolutely do practice runs with supportive people. But here's what it's not good for: conditioning your stress response, training under realistic pressure, practicing with your heart activated, racing, running, threat activation engaged, learning to think clearly when you're anxious, building genuine performance resilience, the kind that holds up when stakes are real. Treat practice with supportive people as exactly what it is, a chance to refine your material, not to condition your nervous system for the actual experience of being evaluated. So what does real pressure training actually require? To prepare your nervous system for your defense, you need exposure to conditions that trigger your threat response. You need practice when you don't know what questions are coming, when the questions are about your actual research, your specific methodology, your particular findings, so they're genuinely challenging. When you can't just give a prepared answer you've rehearsed 5 times. When you have to think through your response in real time, searching your knowledge while under pressure. You need your heart rate to increase, your stress response to engage. That physical feeling of being evaluated needs to be present. The sensation of this matters, this is real, needs to be there. And then you need to practice performing anyway, staying articulate even though your heart is pounding, thinking clearly even though your amygdala is firing, responding coherently despite the discomfort, taking a breath when you don't immediately know the answer, working through your logic while your body is telling you this is stressful. That's how you train your nervous system. That's how it learns. Okay, this level of pressure is uncomfortable. My heart is racing. I feel evaluated, but I can function through this. I've done it before. I can stay clear. I can think. I can respond. This is manageable. Most students never get this kind of practice. They rehearse content with supportive people. They refine their slides. They anticipate obvious questions. And then they walk into their defense with an untrained nervous system and hope they'll rise to the occasion. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the adrenaline kicks in just right and carries them through. But it's not reliable. It's not trained. It's hoping for the best rather than preparing for real conditions. In the next module, we're going to talk more about this principle. You fall to the level of your training, not your knowledge. We're going to break down what that means for your defense and why knowing your research inside and out doesn't guarantee you'll perform well when pressure hits.